It's your boy Shaker here, and today I will be presenting my 4v4 guide. In this guide, I will be showcasing the Aramusha's feats and discussing the best setups for each game mode and the gear stats you want to aim for. This guide will also be useful for ranked players because I will be going over setups in Dom. However, feel free to skip the gear stats portion since they do not count on ranked Dominion. Now, you must excuse me for not having a Rep 7 Aramusha. I did not buy champion status or the pass, so I started a week late, and I don't have the time to raise him that many reps in such a short amount of time. Yeah, college is a bitch, but rest assured, this guide will be applicable to all levels. Now that the exposition is out of the way, let's discuss our first feat, Iron Lungs. Iron Lungs is just bad. The idea of running from zone to zone when out of stamina sounds nice, but it really falls through the second an assassin outruns you and knocks you down. When out of stamina, you should focus on regenerating your stamina safely rather than running anyway. It's one niche I could see it being used for is dodging ballistas on Sentinel, but you will still get shot by a better player and others have the accuracy of stormtroopers, which means they're gonna miss you either way whether you have this perk or not. Now then, on to body count. Body count is the best of the tier 1 feats in my opinion. It allows you to recover health and stamina in B and can turn the tide of a 1v1. You can do this by using a side heavy to kill off minions nearby you. Even if you're parried, you will get some health and stamina back, and with Rock Steady, you can minimize the punishment for getting parried in the first place. Now then, on to Deadly. Deadly isn't really that big of a deal. Upon landing a hit, you will deal 10% extra damage for about 3 seconds. While Aramusha has those light chains to take advantage of this, better players can easily block most of the attacks, and you may get like one 10% boosted attack off before you have to wait for the cooldown to end. Even then, the damage isn't even noticeable. In the footage, you probably didn't even notice the increased amount of damage done to the Raider. Also, with gear stats, you can easily reach plus 10% damage without having to resort to using this over body count, and even on ranked Dominion, you're not going to really notice the difference. Now then, onto Smoke Bomb. Smoke Bomb is an excellent support option. It not only breaks the enemy's guard stance, but it also prevents zone captures, enemies reviving their allies, and inhibit enemies from interacting with the offerings. I mean, they won't drop them, but they can't pick them up either. This can be a good anti-gank tool for you and your allies, or just a distraction until your other teammates show up. Just be aware that the enemy can still throw out stray attacks and guard breaks, and that they will regain their abilities outside of the smoke bomb. At least it doesn't blind your allies like the Knight's Flash Bomb. Now then, let's discuss Juggernaut. Juggernaut is awesome. It prevents you from being guard broken, your attacks are uninterruptible, and you take far less damage with the only drawback being that you're slower. Perfect for turtling and stalling fights, yeah? There's just one issue. It doesn't last that long. In the footage, it lasted for about 3 seconds. Even if that was shortened because I used it in the duel mode, it doesn't last that long in Dominion either. It may give you like 5 to 10 extra seconds, and then you're vulnerable again. Its cooldown is actually longer than the feat itself. If it lasted longer, it would be a great option for maybe guarding a zone or just a good anti-gank tool, but sadly it's rather pointless at the moment, especially compared to Smoke Bomb and Rock Steady. Speaking of Rock Steady, Rock Steady, in my opinion, is the best of the three. It not only makes you less vulnerable to parries, but it also prevents you from being knocked down by all means. So revenge mode activation isn't an issue for you anymore, and the takedown feat and throws when you're out of stamina will no longer knock you down. I would have put in footage of that as well, but you'd be amazed at how uncooperative level 1 bots can be. You still have to be wary of Stampede and the other sprinting attacks, alongside the fact that some characters will still be able to guard break you. However, you can now utilize his Tempest Chains a lot easier, and the best part is the feat is passive. Even if Smoke Bomb is useful, I'd recommend Rocksteady because you could have another teammate run that feat instead, and Rocksteady will save you a lot more than Smoke Bomb. Now then, let's discuss Second Wind. Second Wind is alright. It's helpful in 1v1s and can be useful in Deathmatch and Tribute. Issue is that it doesn't heal too much, and while its activation is instant, it's still iffy to consider over Sharpened Blade. Besides, you have body count and Stalwart Banner for healing, alongside zones, so do you really need this feat in Dominion? Speaking of Sharpened Blade, Sharpened Blade makes the spam even more irritating. You cause a bar of bleed damage for each hit, and the feat lasts a while too. If you can consistently feint your opponents into being hit, you will kill them really quickly. Just be careful not to hit the allies, for they will take bleed damage as well. Also, bleed damage ignores all defensive gear stats outside of debuff resistance, which makes the feat useful for breaking through turtles. Now then, let's discuss the new feat that was introduced with him, that being Flaming Arrows. Flaming Arrows is basically a longbow with a fire effect. It's fun and can help your allies kill off a turtle, but like longbow, it's situational at best. In Tribute, you can use it to hit someone running off with your offering, but even then, Sharpened Blades is basically 2 sprinting attacks with the ability to bleed out the opponent's HP. That, and like bleed damage, debuff resistance reduces damage dealt by fire, so if you're unfortunate, that so-called arrow that you needed to kill someone might not kill someone because the fire doesn't hurt him. Like Second Wind, it's not bad, but it's just not as good as Sharpened Blade. Now, to discuss the Tier 4 feats. Victory! Arrow Storm is rather tricky. It has 3 volleys of arrows, which means more chances to hit the enemy, and it can clear out the minions in the mid lane. But it's really hard to use. You have to understand how the arrow's aiming system works, since it's not as like Catapult or Fire Flask where you just pick a circle, throw it, and everything in it dies. Not only that, it's slower than Catapult and Fire Flask. It can also kill you and your allies in the process if you're not careful. If you've had success with this feat, feel free to use it. However, even then, I feel that the other 2 feats are better, and someone else can easily run that feat or another AoE attack. Speaking of the better feats, let's discuss Stalwart Banner. Stalwart Banner is the ultimate support feat. It heals all of your allies who stay within the circle, and it can turn the tide of a losing battle. Just remember that you could still die in the circle from an attack that's strong enough to kill you past your healing, and a smart opponent will push you out of it if they get the chance. While it is good, so many other classes can make use of it. I mean, if your team needs support, go for it, but honestly, if you have someone playing that role, I would recommend Fear itself, which is coming up now. Victory! Fear itself is a feat to be feared indeed. Like Stalwart Banner, you summon a circle. However, the circle follows you and all your opponents will take penalties to their defense and their stamina regeneration. Consider it the offensive Stalwart Banner that also stacks with Sharpened Blade and Deadly, which will cause you to plow through your enemies really quickly. In the footage demonstrating the combo, I didn't even have gear stats, so you have the potential to exceed the damage I dealt. People hated this character without the feat, but just imagine the amount of hate mail you'll get when you start murdering 3 to 4 enemies within a couple of heavies. Now then, on to discuss some feat setups you can pull off with this character. This little setup I have is honestly what I believe to be the best setup he can use in Dominion. Body count allows you to capture and guard the mid lane easier, rock steady as well, rock steady, and we have Sharpened Blade to dispatch opponents and Fear itself to turn the table in a group fight. You could opt to run Smoke Bomb for its utility or Second Wind and Stalwart for longevity and further support. However, I believe that you should let someone else perform this role. Nobushi's support is far better because she has Speed Revive and tends to run Stalwart and Smoke Bomb on her natural builds. Now, if you're insistent on playing support or you don't have anyone who can play that role, then feel free to run Smoke Bomb and Stalwart instead. However, only run those feats if you have to, especially Smoke Bomb since you're giving up Rocksteady in the process. Other than that, this is the optimal build in my opinion for Dominion. Now then, what about optimal builds for Elimination, Tribute, Skirmish, and any other game mode out there that's 4v4? You see any difference between the two builds? Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, Deadly is the only replacement over body count because there's not really any minions you can kill to make use of his health recovery. However, the other feats are more viable substitutes now, especially Second Wind since you can no longer heal naturally. Stalwart also gets a say because Stalwart is a beast in Skirmish and Tribute because you're always likely to be fighting in pairs. And if you don't believe in the Sharpened Blade combo is worth it, then I don't recommend you run Fear itself because Fear itself, while it's good in group fights, alone it's not that powerful. For Elim, I'd recommend running Stalwart over Fear itself because Stalwart can be applied to more situations, and I mean, sure, you don't get the Sharpened Blade combo, but the Sharpened Blade by itself does a lot of damage. However, in Skirmish, Fear itself still has a lot of use, and someone else can easily utilize Stalwart instead. In Tribute, it's more 50-50 since you may or may not be grouped up. Regardless, both are better than Aramusha. Smoke Bomb outside of Tribute suffers from the same problems it does in Dom, in being someone else can run that feat and you would be losing rock steady. Reason Tribute is an exception is because, like I said, you can halt the enemy from claiming or picking up a Tribute while also buying time for your teammates to arrive. In Elim, it's not worth giving up for Rocksteady since the opponent can move away from the smoke with ease and you'll be in more 1v1 scenarios. Now, if you are to use Flaming Arrow, Skirmish and Tribute would be the best places to utilize them, especially in Tribute since you can pop people running away. However, you're giving up Sharpened Blade and Second Wind for an overall meh ability that's situational at best. Now then, on to gear stats. But before I go to that, I must remind you, these do not apply in ranked. So if you are here for solely ranked, you feel free to leave the video and, of course, leave a like, blah 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 blah. You get the idea. Regardless, it's time to move on. We'll start with the blade. But before I start with the blade, please remember that I'm like Rep 2 and my advice and what you see on the picture may be different. But always trust my advice because I plan to have those stats upon reaching that rank. Anyways, you want to go attack, then defense penetration, and then block damage. Block damage is basically you asking for a parry, and even with Rocksteady, like I said, some heroes can still guard break you. You should always be opting to open up your opponents. Now another option is to maximize attack if you do not care about more defensive builds being annoying to kill, and you do have Sharpened Blade. However, just be aware that since they'll be more annoying to kill, you're buying the enemy team more time to rally up and get you. And Sharpened Blade is a tier 3 feat, so you may or may not have access to it. Now then, onto the hilt. In Dominion, I highly recommend you go max attack. You can heal naturally, so execution health regen isn't really that important, and I personally find revive speed situational since other players can run speed revive for that issue, and there's the possibility that you may not be able to revive someone, making the gear stat rather useless. Outside of Dominion, focus on execution health regen second rather than going max attack, so you will be able to keep fighting longer and you will recover more health. Sure, there are health and shield power-ups, but someone else might be in need of them more, or someone else might have taken them and you might not have access to them. Max attack is still optional to maximize damage, however, in Elim and Tribute, that can be very beneficial to be able to heal yourself. Now then, let's move on to the guard. Max revenge gain at all times. Revenge mode will save you in almost every situation from 1v1s to ganks. Now, I will say in Elim, you can maximize attack since you see revenge mode a lot less than others. However, you run the risk of being overwhelmed in a gank and you not having revenge mode to save you. Now, as far as whether or not to prioritize attack or defense, I say aim for a balanced portion. However, I would lean more on revenge attack since you already have 2 gear stats boosting the attack. Also, revenge attack can ensure that the top heavy that you hit someone with when you knock them down, that they don't get up. They don't get up. You get the idea. Now then, let's move on to a splashy sun hat. For the sun hat, I recommend either exhaustion recovery followed by defense or vice versa. I normally go defense since I know how to manage my stamina, and I also run high stamina cost reduction and stamina regen, but regardless, I find debuff resistance to be situational at best. If you insist on running it or you're expecting a team full of Shaman and Nobushi, run it second in defense since defense will protect you from the other attacks better. But the reason I find it situational is because you may or may not have to deal with all the traps and fire and bleed damage. I mean, what happens when you run into a team with people who don't bleed you? Then you pretty much threw away exhaustion recovery, which is going to help you a lot more than a situational bleed debuff. Now then, let's go to the Tunic. The Tunic has several different paths you can go. If you're playing Elim and don't care for revenge mode, you can maximize defense. If you'd like to use the mode more offensively to focus on knocking people down, hitting them, and then building up revenge again to activate it, focus on defense and ensure that revenge mode duration is as low as possible. If you'd like to be in revenge mode for as long as possible, you could probably figure out what I'm going to tell you to do. I will say though that revenge mode defense should be run second in all builds, not maximizing defense, since it could prevent the chances of you being killed while in revenge mode due to a strong attack. It also helps if you're turtling until reinforcements arrive. I can't decide which is the best build, though I do recommend experimenting with all of them until you find the best optimization for you. Now then, let's finish this up with the arm guard, shall we? The best way to go about the arm guard is stamina cost reduction followed by stamina regen followed by defense. I do believe that the hat will mitigate poor defenses, but if you do not care for stamina regen, feel free to switch those two out. Reason I opt for stamina cost reduction over them all is because it allows you to throw out more consecutive feints and continue on with this chains. Even if you're guarding the mid lane with body count and you're healing and you have the ability to heal yourself, you can still run out of stamina by being too aggressive. Sure, exhaustion recovery is a thing and rock steady prevents you from being knocked down, but you're still in a vulnerable state while not being able to attack. It may not be as bad in Dominion, however, in other modes it could be a death sentence since you have to kill the enemy as quickly as possible and you run the risk of being ganked, especially in skirmish. However, if you believe that your exhaustion recovery is fast enough, then feel free to prioritize prioritize defense on this guard gear stat. You get the idea. Now then, let's wrap this video up, shall we? I hope you enjoyed this guide on the Aramusha. If you'd like me to go over another character, feel free to leave that hero's name down in the comments section. Just remember that DLC characters are likely to take longer to create videos on because I'm a cheap ass who didn't buy the pass. If you enjoyed the video, I'm Shiko from Clan Chimera, and if you hated it, I'm Felicia from that rundown store no one talks about. Regardless, I'm signing out. Peace!